Hi, this is Mark Coldren from Ithaca College in Ithaca, New York. I'm the Associate Vice President for Human Resources, and I'm excited today to talk to you about a topic I think that is really important in how we get the best talent into higher education, and that's really about readiness. The interesting part about most searches is that it's all based on experience. We find that we want to try to find the best person, and we all talk about talent management as a broader element. However, everything we do is slanted towards trying to find the most experienced candidate. And the challenge becomes that the most experienced candidate may not be the best match for your organization based on a number of different factors. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about, are we ready as institutions to find new talent? And if you're that person who is ready, are you ready to be found? So today, the agenda I thought I'd share with you is that I'd like to talk to you about why I think readiness is important in the process, and that in the process of bringing people into the organization. But I also think it's really very, very important when we think about who's ready for that next step, and is it something we should set intentionally as a reason why we're looking to hire people. Really, this is also a part of an overall look at talent management. And within that, you have to be thinking about competencies. And as a leader in an organization, can you identify if people are displaying that true attribute of being ready for the competencies of leadership that you're seeking in a particular position? Within that also, we have to talk about performance management because we need to get feedback in order to find out that we are moving on the right path. Individual development planning is always a key element of performance management, and it's something that you work all the time. And those who are people who are earlier in their career, this is everything to them. So can you have a process that focuses in on individual development planning and to really be intentional about doing that development process, but also can you be intentional of trying to find that person who's ready for that next step? There's a lot of good reasons why that should make sense at your institution. I think when you do go in and you're thinking about it from an intentional point of view, you need to think about your pool. And should you do this for your current role, you have to kind of do an assessment. It's not the best way to go for every situation, but in many instances on campuses around the country, we have lots of experience. Maybe what we could use is different perspective. So what should be done differently around recruiting, and how can you make sure that you know the talent that you have right now? We also want to think about how to assess readiness. What are some good questions to ask for? What are things to look for on people's background? And if you are that person who's trying to move forward, how can you display that you are ready to move forward onto that next step in your career? Always the interview is a big aspect. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that. And I think I'd like to talk a little bit, maybe from a little bit of a personal example, how you can talk about being ready for that next step. And I've actually had some recent experience that maybe I could share with you that I got to a point where I could talk about readiness pretty well, only because that was going to be the reason that maybe I wouldn't have been the candidate for the next step that I'm looking for. And I think the last thing, how do you know if you're successful in your organization if you have focused on readiness and see that as a big element of your talent management approach? So experience. We always think it's the best thing, right? So the number one factor, I think, in every process right now that I'm connected to with searches on our campus is that people really go through a list of candidates and they start to draw the line about where they want to talk to folks. And they start that line based on who's done the job before, who has experience in that role. That seems to be paramount as you want to, all those cliches, hit the ground running, right? You want to have somebody who can immediately plug and play, be able to get right into where you want to go. And for the individual, it's maybe not the best thing because sometimes we're interested in a role that we aspire to. This is a great quote from a famous tennis player, Jimmy Connors. And he said this in an interview once. He said, look, experience is a great advantage. The problem is that when you get the experience, you're too damn old to do anything about it. And I think he's probably right, because a lot of times we take experience for granted. We think it's the number one factor that someone's going to be an outstanding performer because they have done things before that are like it. Now, I'm not going to discredit this experience. It means a lot. However, let's think about it from a hiring point of view at an institution. I don't know about you, but when we're looking at the marketing, or we're looking at the pools, and we're looking at the market of how we're going to pay for our talent, we find that we lose a lot of our best candidates because we cannot afford them in so many ways. Now, that doesn't mean we're not paying the market value, but it might mean we're searching in places that perhaps are too challenging for us as an institution to be able to work with. So I'll give you an example. We're here in upstate New York. We're a medium-sized private, and we begin to attract somebody in a field that we think, let's take, for example, information technology. Naturally, we look in a metropolitan area like Boston or New York City, and we find that experience with people in the information technology field, they're going to be anywhere from 20 to 40% higher on their current base pay than our high end of the range we're looking for. And you could say it's higher education because we don't pay as much. I think that's probably true. Obviously, people aren't in higher ed for the money. However, we do need to be competitive in the market. So it cries out for us to do something a little different. And maybe experience isn't the best thing we need. Maybe we need to do is think about who's the ready candidate for the role. Candidates need to show and talk to and demonstrate they're ready. So how can we find those people who have done some things that are they're poised, ready to go on to that next step? So I'm going to challenge you to think today that if you've looked at every search in your organization and it's all about experience, then maybe you could take a step back and say, maybe there's another way to look at this because we won't have to lose our best candidate to money. Maybe even if we advertise how much we're going to pay, people still go through the process because they're interested in your institution. And you fall in love with the candidate all the way to the end, and then you find out you're $35,000 apart. So I think it's one of those things where you really have to think about experience. Sometimes you have to buy it, absolutely. And you have to know when that's strategic for your institution. But I'm not saying it's the thing you should do every search. When you think about talent management, all of these circles that you see on the screen are parts of a good, balanced, comprehensive approach of how you bring people into an organization and how you look at their life cycle with you as they develop and grow and hopefully stay and contribute. There are 4 of them that are colored yellow here, and these are the ones I think that focus the most on the topic today about readiness. If you go thinking about it from an employee development point of view, this is how we're trying to find learning experiences that develop people along the way. Can we provide a pipeline, a career path? Higher education notoriously is not very good at this. The reason is we have so many unique, specialized positions. I see it in big institutions and small, and it comes from a lot of conversations with colleagues and also about bringing people in from the outside in a pool when we're interviewing them. I think if we are going to try to show a path, we need to be able to do this better. We need to show employee development is a key part of what we think is valuable at our institution. Along with that, you have to have the performance management process in order to provide them the feedback and to reward them. But along the way, you're going to be talking about competencies, right? So competencies are the key things. It's the knowledge, skills, and attributes that folks have. And are you talking about it within your job descriptions? Are you saying that it isn't, are you making it a paramount part of leadership development at your institution? Now, one thing I've heard a lot of people talk about, and maybe this is a personal bias for me, but they talk about hard skills and soft skills. It's a pet peeve of mine. Please don't use that. They are all skills, they are all attributes, and they're all key and very important. For example, if you say a soft skill is about the relationships you can build or the team that you can develop, but you really want to have a technical ability, it's again using the example of information technology on network engineering, you're going to minimize the importance of how you can build a team to attack that technical situation. Please don't try to look at it as hard skill and soft skill, especially when you're talking about readiness candidates. They can be shaped in so many ways about your culture if they can come in and demonstrate to you they're ready to learn, they're eager to learn, and they have an attribute that they can demonstrate to you that they are a lifelong learner. Talent assessment and recruitment are the key parts of determining readiness. So how well is your process to be able to know you have the talent you need so that when you are going out to figure out who should fill that opening, then maybe experience isn't the thing you absolutely have to have because you have enough of that. you might want to recruit for who is ready. So this is just looking at talent management as a broader approach because it does impact how you think about experience and how you think about bringing candidates who can display readiness to go to the next level. So what is readiness? Well, it's kind of trying to break it down is it's kind of a what and a how scenario. When you think about it from the what perspective, you have to be able to have a description in your mind of what it is, and you also have to be able to describe it as an individual when you're in the situation of being in an interview or being approached about a role. I've always felt like demonstrating a track record of learning and development, or really embracing being a lifelong learner and thinking of examples and questions to determine that, shows somebody who is ready. They constantly are trying to learn from things, and they're trying to absolutely forward themselves in their career because they see learning as a linchpin to get there. They demonstrate a capability to make some connections. Synthesizers are great people who are ready for the next step because they're able to see, I don't know this, I don't know that, but I'm able to ask the question because I see the connection, and I can see that if I engage other people with experiences, I don't have to be the one with the most experience in the room. I just need to demonstrate how to help connect those ideas before I can provide the value of what I do know to make this a better situation. The other thing I think that's really helpful, and I've found this because I've had an opportunity to work with some early career professionals recently, is listening to their passion. And their passion usually is for the bigger picture mission of what the organization's about. It speaks to them. I want someone on my team, I want someone that I work with to have that passion, to know where they want to go and what they want to do. That to me tells me somebody who's ready to take on more responsibility because they understand there's more to it. There's an emotional attachment to where you want to go. That's true engagement. That's something I want in a readiness candidate. As an institution, when you think about it from the how perspective, if we want to have different people who can demonstrate other levels of experience, meaning readiness, I need to assess where I am right now. And I ask this question: is experience essential to the recruitment of the role that we're doing right now? And I think that's a really good question to ask. If you've put someone in an interim role and they've filled in that role for a year and the work has been done pretty effectively, you should ask yourself, who am I looking for then in the field? Am I looking to fill that on an ongoing basis? Does it have to be somebody with experience? Could it be somebody who brings in a readiness element because it already can function under an interim level? That could be one indicator that maybe experience isn't essential. Maybe it's not a rebuild, but more it's an enhanced approach of something moving forward. Think how best to advertise that you are interested in new perspectives. Your language and your posting is everything when you really want to say, we're looking for people who have a passion, who are ready to grow the organization. Use that word ready. I think it can be a really dynamic element and very attractive to even the passive candidate who isn't necessarily thinking about the next step until they see that you have that opportunity that strikes something in their curiosity. Think how in a job description and in the posting and the qualifications that you don't lower those, but what you're saying is the level of qualification isn't going to push the readiness candidate out of the pool. Meaning, what is the level you really want? Is it master's preferred or is it master's required? It's an age-old conversation that you have with a lot of line managers about what they think they need to have. And so it's important, I think, that you really push through that and figure out that you don't want to lose the candidate that might have transferable skills from another industry because you're looking at experience and maybe because you're using a qualification. It could be on an educational level or it could be even on a certification level. Now, the last thing is really to think how to interview for it. And I think you really have to kind of approach an interview in a sense that you want them to describe things that they know. And that means you're going to do behavioral event interviewing. You're not going to ask those closed-ended questions. Don't ask the question where they're going to give you the answer you want. You want them to describe their learning process. And I tell that a lot to the students who are at my institution who come in and say, I'd like to go on their first job interview, any tips or anything. And I say, well, first on your resume, make sure that you talk about your coursework. What did you learn in the coursework? Because that's your experience when you're new into the field of any field you're going into. Show how those projects are experience that determine you can be ready to then apply that in a real world setting. As an individual, the how I think you really have to do is, can I display those things on my resume that show I've done a lot of things up to this point and I'm ready for that next step? A real key element is, how can I speak to it in my cover letter? Cover letters, I used to think when I was in the private sector, were just, hi, I'm Mark, I'm interested in your job, please see my resume. Coming into higher education, I really learned that cover letters are such a strong element of a search process. And the reason being, this is a chance where we get to know who you are. We learn a little bit about your writing style. We learn a little bit about what you care about. We learn about the homework you did on the organization. And we learned, I think, can you display you are passionate and you are excited about this next opportunity? And that's what I want to read in a letter. I want to read that you have that excitement, and an excitement for my role, not dear fill in the blank, but rather you've tailored this to this position and you've thought a lot about it and it's important to you. In an interview, you want to kind of be, to turn this a little bit on how I can shape my responses to show that I am ready for it. You never want to embellish because you could get caught in that, but you want to show that you think you could learn your way into being effective, and that what you are bringing will bring a value while you learn. So let's think about it when we're looking at the pool. Most search committees like to cut their pools down and say, here are all the people I want to talk to, here are the people that are non-selection reasons. So, and it could be everything from they don't have enough experience as one factor, and I've mentioned that a number of times, don't have the educational level, all kinds of reasons, right? So I think the best search committees, when we work with them, we try to say, can you do this kind of bucket approach, A, B, and C? The A list are obviously the ones that jump out and you say, wow, they are impressive candidates based on what we're looking for. We see in all of their materials that they're exciting and we want to talk to them. The B list is the one I'd like you to think about from a readiness perspective. Make sure that everybody you put in that next level down still meets the minimum qualifications, but that B list is, you want to look at that closer. Things you want to look for are the transferable skills and experiences from other organizations and industries. Somebody who's going to work in finances in higher education, well, clearly we can look at somebody who's worked in the financial world someplace else. Find out if they can talk to what might be different. And at least if they come to you and say, I appreciate that there are many differences, and that transferability is really what you probably want. It's a whole different perspective that could really help as you think about where you want to go, especially on the financial side. Another thing to look for when you're going through the pool, in the B list anyway, who holds that number 2 role? Who's the associate or the assistant director or assistant or associate manager? And I'm thinking at least 2 cycles, so maybe at least a year or 2. The reason is they've had a chance to see how they support the person or the individual who is the leader of that particular group, but they've taken on broader responsibilities. They've had a chance to see where they fit bigger picture. The number 2 role is key. That is really the ones you can focus on who's ready. And I think especially for me in a medium-sized institution or a small institution, looking for a number 2 in a big place, we're perfect. We're perfect to say, come to us in a smaller setting, be the leader here. If you do want to go back to the big public or the big place, you can do that. But we become a place to go for the number 2 and take them earlier in their career and hopefully get them and keep them as they stay and want to grow with us. Hopefully what we see is that in the pool, when we read the cover letters, again, it's passionate. It's one where they really have done their homework and they know a lot about you. And the web is it's such a factor now in terms of what we can learn about where people are going in terms of strategic plans, of looking at broad-based things that have happened recently on their campus, of new initiatives for students or faculty or staff. If they do that homework, it should come through in their cover letter. It could even come through in how they position the items on their resume. Everybody should have versions of that speak to these key elements in your job posting. And finally, I look in that letter, do they see themselves in the role? And do they share, they would love to talk to you about their vision, and they give you a little bit of a sample of what that might be. When you get to the interview stage, and we want to look at readiness, so here's what you end up doing in the organization. I need to hear answers that are connected to more information than I expect. For example, the homework factor. Are they able to draw, if I'm asking them a question about measuring a strategic plan, are they able to say, I did read that in your, for us it was Ithaca College 2020. I was able to look in your longer look, strategic look at the organization that you wanted to expand internationally. Let me tell you a little bit about what I've had some experience doing that. That's the homework factor. They have looked into it and they've seen it. Yes, they want to tell you about things they've done at their organization, but I'm looking for answers where they're connecting a little bit more to me. That tells me about readiness. The candidate also speaks a lot of how they learn, and they continue to learn. Can they tell me they're a lifelong learner? They can use the phrase, but they tell me they're a lifelong learner by how they approach their job every day. They tell me a little bit about how they weren't sure where to go, and they went into a process of learning, and that got them further in terms of results that they were looking for. And again, I look when people talk about learning, I like to see it in their eyes. I like to see them be passionate about learning. That displays readiness. So now, as an individual, what do I need to do? I always say the best defense is a good offense. I know I'm ready to take this new role on, and you may be looking at me and saying, how could I in the role that I currently hold? I need to be able to articulate what would be different about the new role versus the one that I'm currently in. And I need to show that that excites me and it doesn't scare me, that I'm ready for this. I'm excited to take on a challenge of which I probably don't know a lot of things about it, but I know enough right now to show you I could demonstrate how I could grow into this at a rapid pace. I want to make sure that you understand I get urgency. A sense of urgency from somebody who's displaying readiness is really key because they get the fact that they have to show you that they know they have to make up ground. And the ground they have to make up is how fast can they learn, how quickly can they go through information and come up with the right questions to show you they're ready to move in a particular direction. The other thing I think it's really good as an individual is to use examples where I've needed to take a risk. And I did. And the risk was calculated, but they might ask me a question about that. But even if they don't, I need to bring that in to let you know that I see that as a part of how you get ready for the next role, is you do take a risk. And I think the last thing is make sure that you talk about examples where you made a mistake. I think a lot of people are afraid to be accountable for the mistakes they make, and the ones they've made in the past. What I find is that people really like when you can say, here's what I learned as a result of that. I'm not going to do it again, but I'm going to be better because I did make the mistake. I actually love to hear that in an interview. And I found that in a couple of opportunities that I've had to display, I wanted to talk about not necessarily a flat-out failure, but one where it didn't come out the way I hoped it would, because then I could talk to you about what I learned and what I did next. What you do next says everything about when you don't have success. So what happens when you are successful and you do bring people in who are displaying readiness? And you think about it and it's more intentional and you're trying to get those different perspectives. I think you're going to see a lot of different things. First of all, you should expect that you're going to crank up your professional development budget. The reason is because you're going to be bringing in people, and the people that you're going to be bringing in are going to require even more opportunities to get experiences in other places. And that is an indicator that you're making a commitment to helping everybody be a lifelong learner. I worked with a colleague once, and I asked her to really define for our organization what she thought was a learning organization. There are lots of articles about it. I said, write a short white paper for us because we need to talk to our leaders about what it really means to be a learning organization. And what does it look like for us here at our institution? I think talking about the resources you put towards it, that says you're serious about it. And I believe that it's not all going to conferences. It can be workshops and webinars and blended learning opportunities, but you should expect an increase. That'll tell you you are focusing on readiness, you're looking at potential, and you're trying to develop your workforce to do even more than it is today. I think the quality of performance reviews always are a great indicator that you are moving in a direction of giving the right kind of feedback that get people prepared for what they need to do for the results that you're hoping for at your institution. It's one thing for compliance. I know many institutions of higher education struggle with performance reviews. We struggle with it on so many levels. First, we think about it and we say, gosh, this feels like I'm in a company and management by objective, and we're not. We're an institution of higher education. The challenge becomes, of course, we need to have goals and objective, and we need to measure, and we need to give feedback. And I think you need to go those next couple of steps to say, what does that mean in terms of next steps for the individual? What does it mean for the rewards if we have them in a given year? But even if we don't have rewards, we still have to give them that kind of feedback. It's a terrific philosophical discussion with people about whether or not you should provide a summary at the end of a performance review each cycle. For example, did somebody meet expectations, exceed expectations? What's the difference between sometimes exceeds and always exceeds? And everybody wants to say, how do you quantify that? Well, it's not an objective element. It has goals and it has measures, but there's a subjectivity to it. Did you lay expectations out there? Did people meet them? And how am I going to reward what they do? It can't be all about result. Sometimes it's going to be about the process of how they got there. I've seen some great performance review processes, especially for early career professionals, that you're going to give a greater reward for somebody. They displayed how much they learned in the course of that first year. I think that's a key element for people to really talk about and say, how can we do that better? The better quality of performance reviews is going to really determine your talent management approach being successful, and ultimately, if you have a good focus on getting people ready for next steps. The other thing I'm going to suggest is that if you see a lot more in terms of innovation coming out of your organization without asking for it, there's a momentum to new ideas. People bring in those ideas because they found it came out of a problem they were trying to solve. Or they feel empowered to come in and say, you know, I've been doing this a certain way. I think there's a better way to do this. Or you've given us a charge about being really effective and really efficient. I've thought a lot about it, and here are some ideas that I'd like to share in that particular area. When you see more ideas coming up without you asking for them, I think you're seeing an indicator that people feel they want to display they're being innovative, they want to display they're ready to take more on. And it doesn't always have to be about promotion. There's a great thing about looking at leadership. And I once read, there was a gentleman who said it's called small L leadership. I think small L leadership means it isn't always about getting the next position. What it's about is displaying leadership in a way that shows you have ideas, you have innovation, and when you're bringing that forward, people then start to say, there's someone we have to try to find a path to put them in a leadership role. They're continually pushing where they're going, even without being asked for it. Your organizational culture should change. And by change, I'm saying change for the better. And by changing for the better, you might have to go back and look at your core values and your competencies and say, you know what, these are a little bit, they're not as adequate as they were before. They're not pushing us. They're not matching up to how fast we're going or the sense of urgency we've created. What a great problem to have. What you're finding out is that your organizational culture is pushing the question as a leader for you to go back and say, these core values, let's keep revisiting them. Let's see if they still are important to us, important to our mission. And if they really were good core values, they'll stand up. But the process of going back and revisiting is a great way for you to know that your organization is in a mode of change, growth, and even transformation. A lot of people have talked about transformation as being what higher education needs to do. I know in our profession, human resources, we talk about that all the time. What exactly does it mean to transform human resources? I think it starts with a culture of believing it can happen. And by just trying one or two things different because we think it could be better without being asked for it, or because we had our back against a wall. Those are the things that I think when they start to happen on your campus, my guess is you've had a good focus on helping people see what the future looks like and their role in it and their readiness to be able to contribute to that. The other thing I think you're going to see is that you will have a lot more applicants will apply to your organization if you really are making some of these transformative changes. The word gets out. It becomes a word on the street kind of feel that something special is happening at your institution. Every conference you go to, all your people talk about the excitement that's there. Every time that they speak in their community, whether it's because they volunteer in other organizations or because they just happen to meet other people at a barbecue, they talk about what they're excited about. They're not talking about what they're worried about. They're talking about what they're excited about. That buzz will get more people to look at your organization and think, that's someplace I want to go work. I want to work with that person because they are excited, they see a future, and you know what? They can help me get ready for where I want to go. They want to be part of that. If you're doing that really well, the number of applications will rise, and not just because of looking at the sheer numbers of demographics, but because they want to be part of your organization and the changes that you're going through. You'll also see the number of applicants without specific postings increasing, meaning they put an application in or they send an email to HR. I know you're not hiring, but boy, if you were, I'm interested in coming to your organization. I love the area. I love what you're doing. I'm excited about it. That's kind of an indicator that you're doing something special and people want to be part of it. The last thing on here is if you happen to measure engagement, you should see a positive increase. And a lot of people do this by engagement surveys, or they do this by other means. Mostly it's surveys, but I think there are others. Sometimes people develop indices of things you see when people are truly engaged. And I guess one of the best things about a definition of engagement I always like is that little extra commitment that I have, that you get something more than just my best effort. You get that little emotional commitment from me. I believe in the mission a little more. I believe I have a little bit more of a passion element to it. You might find yourself saying that this is, here is my boss, but it's my boss. I see my chancellor, my president. They say messages to me. And that helps me be engaged. And I think that really speaks to people who are earlier in their career when they're trying to find out where they fit in these large organizations that are being run by folks who are much older than they are, but they have more experiences. The thing is, they want your experience in a faster, rapid timeline than you did. And you can't resent them for that because I think the times are expecting it. Embrace it. Embrace the fact that when you hire somebody who is earlier in their career or early in that particular kind of role, they haven't had that leadership opportunity, it's a great thing. The reason is because they're going to come, they're hungry, they're bringing that perspective. It'll make you better because you are now creating a team where they see that learning and moving forward and being passionate is a great thing. So it's not something to be that you don't want. Tell people to be patient. I would rather have people go too far, too fast, 100 miles an hour into a wall, and then take a step back and say, okay, maybe I went too fast. What did I learn from that? I'd rather be around those people. They're the folks who are going to help us figure out how higher education can meet all the challenges that it needs to today. Last thing I'll lead you with is that readiness has become kind of personally important to me. This was something that over the last couple of years, it turns out I've kind of fit a little bit of a profile in my profession. Number of years of experience, kinds of things that you've had an opportunity to do, places you've had to work, that sometimes you get a call. And it's the most flattering thing to get a call or see a role that you're possibly interested in, and you begin to think about your own next step. So I'm at a medium-sized private, and I began to, once in a while, get a call about a bigger role, a very different role, something that would be at one of the big R1 public kind of institutions. And often I thought to myself, what would that leap look like? Am I ready for something like that? Big thing I can suggest to you is get involved in your professional organization in whatever field you're in, because you'll begin to talk with your colleagues, and they'll be working at different places, and you'll begin to see, hey, wait a minute, I can think the same way they do. I can learn from them. I could be ready for a bigger opportunity if it ever presented itself. Well, so I found myself in an opportunity to get into a couple of searches, and I did well. They seemed like a good match all the way up to the end. And in the end, I think it was me against experience, and I thought that was fine. I think that's important for search committees to say, in this instance, that set of experience is better than Mark telling me he's probably ready to make that change. every time I went through that process, it was such a terrific learning experience, and it taught me a little bit better to articulate the kinds of things I think I needed to learn, the kinds of things I think I'm hopeful to be able to do, the kinds of things I aspire to be as a leader, as a contributor on a campus. Well, I think the best match happened for me, and I'm excited. Actually, next month in July, I'm going to be taking on a new role. I've loved everything I've done at Ithaca College. It's been a tremendous experience here. I love the people I work with very much, and I've learned a lot, and it's been a great place to work. But I'm getting an opportunity. I'm going to go work at the University at Buffalo and the SUNY system in the state of New York. It's a big public. It's very different from what I'm doing, and I can't tell you how excited and anxious I am about that opportunity. But boy, it's something I believe I'm ready for. And I think I'm glad I had the opportunity to talk to people about how I think I'm ready for it. So maybe in a couple of years, you could look me up and find out maybe I was ready, maybe I wasn't. I sure hope I am. I sure hope you move forward in your processes and try to think that readiness could be a great attribute, a great element to include in your search processes. And in the short time, if you'd like to get a hold of me, here's my contact information. There'll be an opportunity to forward it. If not, look me up. I'll be at the University of Buffalo in the State University of New York system, and I'll be there later on this summer, and I'm really excited about that opportunity. I'd like to thank Higher Ed Jobs for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you today. It's been fun. I hope there's been some value to it, and I hope you all can think a little bit more about this, because I think it's a real key factor in how we search for folks moving forward in higher education. Thanks very much.